go, but I'm sure that the people in this room have a million questions. Is there going, you asked about writing questions down, but
Oh, there will be time, yes.
how long is the presentation going to go? 'Cause I think that,
I mean, if y'all want, I can stop it now and we can just take questions. Well, okay, I guess before I will take questions, locally there's a group, the Sheffield Organizing Committee, that is trying to work around strategy for being involved as community members. In addition to being able to file comments with FERC, you can also act as an intervener. And if you're acting as an intervener, you will receive updates on when the different parts of the application. You'll be able to you'll be involved in the process of the permitting and have the ability to sit at the table and have a more direct impact on what's going on if the pipeline is going to be in this area, if it's going to be rerouted, or if it's going to happen at all.
so when you've been talking about comments, what you're referring to is comments prior to the approval of the entire pipeline. You're not talking about comments specific to your property. In other words, right now, as I understand, the site of the pipeline has not yet been approved. Is that correct?
To my knowledge.
To your knowledge. So right now, we have plans from Williams to put this pipeline into. So the comments you're referring to are comments about the site of the pipeline. Let's say the pipeline site is approved. Let's say that decision first makes the decision. Let's say that happens. At that point, what can the landowners do at that point?
Then you would file a comment for reconsideration.
Okay. For the entire pipeline or just for your property?
You would write it in relevance to why you're an interested party. So if you would want to be specific about your property, but if you also including information about the entire length of the pipeline, if you have it, is also fine. Yeah.
I don't want to monopolize, but in your experience, once the site of the pipeline is approved, the FERC makes a decision, how often is the pipeline actually, the route of the pipeline actually changed from its original route? So those landowners who receive their letters actually have an ability to move the pipeline in one direction or another off their property or not. How often does that actually happen?
That's a good question.
For you?
We heard a person speak last week at the county commission meeting and a meeting with the conservation district plan. And she was from Chester County, and she said in the pre-filing period is the time to make the issue. And they didn't move a pipeline because it was due to a recreation area, it was called forest, and it got planned someplace else. So if you're feeling safe right now here in this county because it's not coming across your property, and the people that are going to have it come across their property, do what she did and do what he's asking, when should it be done? It should be done now, I mean right now, because the county commissioner said in the meeting that they announced to him, it was very early in the process, they announced him. We said, what was early? He said a month ago. Well, they have a lot more planned than that.
It is early in the process, and the earlier that you submit your comments, sure, that's it's going to give you more time to give them more time to respond to you, give you more time to formulate additional arguments. It's important to recognize that if you impacting any of us. More questions?
Sorry, I stepped out for a second. Have you seen any studies about the impact on property values from the pipeline, both on the property that the pipeline is going through and on adjacent properties? Like they're actually, people assume certain things, but I'm just wondering if there have been factual studies done about that.
I have not personally seen any studies. However, I do know that insurance companies have, a lot of them will have statements saying that if you incur damages from different pipelines and things, that's not in their realm of things that they will insure. So that could potentially have an impact on your value of your home. I can talk about where well pads have come into areas and how that has significantly decreased
Well,
their value.
We're talking pipelines,
That's right.
yeah.
Just as a follow-up to the gentleman's question, I don't know how many folks in the room might have Erie as their homeowner insurance. It's a very common homeowner insurance out here. But many folks, I have a copy, a PDF copy of the letter now, have received letters from Erie, where what the letter says is that if you have Erie homeowners insurance, that they may be preparing to raise or to add a rider to your homeowner insurance policy if you have any hydraulic fracturing related infrastructure. That could include pipeline, I don't know that it does, but that if you have any gas related infrastructure on your property. So at least with respect to one insurance company, but I think we could probably expect that there will be others who will follow. There are now letters that have absolutely gone out to homeowners with these riders, and your policy is going to now be more expensive.
Thank you, Wendy. Yeah. And so, I mean, we are an advocacy organization. I thought I made that clear when I started the presentation. And so we don't want to see this really happen in any community. And again, where I am in Southwest Pennsylvania, we're being totally devastated by the gas industry. And this pipeline coming through is just going to encourage that and increase those activities in this area. I don't live here, but the Shalefield Organizing Committee is here, and I know that they would really like to work with you all as community members to band together and decide what you want to happen in your county and in your community in regards to this, and help each other in writing comments and becoming interveners. The process of intervening can seem like it's kind of difficult because it's a formal process where you're involved in the permitting of it. And you generally will have an attorney to do that, which, especially as one landowner, can be quite a burden. However, if there are multiple community members who decide that they want to be interveners, you can, there are attorneys who will work pro bono on these issues, and two, when you're pooling your resources, the financial burden on any one person is greatly decreased. So it makes it much more feasible to act as an intervener and to actually make a significant impact on the process if you are talking to one another, if you can come to agreements about what you want to happen in your community.
Yeah, I filled out a card, but you haven't got them yet, I guess.
Yeah, that didn't really pan out.
My question was about Williams hoping to use eminent domain and call this pipeline a public convenience. And I'm just wondering how they can do that when this 42-inch line that they're going to run in the central Penn, north and south, is, you know, designated to ship gas to the export facility in Coke Point, Maryland for the next 20 years. That sounds to me like that's a convenience for Williams, not for the public. But it will, if they say that this is to expand their service to their southern customers or their Atlantic Coast customers, and they get this eminent domain status, you know, they've got the, you know, the availability of the line then, that they can hook up to all of their customers and ship all of Marcellus gas, which, like you say, will just increase dramatically the amount of drilling and fracking and wastewater and
Eminent
all that.
domain cannot be claimed until a proposal is approved. So at this point, eminent domain does not exist for this Williams line. As far as if they will be able to claim eminent domain, I don't know if that will happen or not. The more comments that are received from people as to why this is not an eminent domain case, the more consideration FERC is going to give that and pay attention to the community and weigh that against what Williams is arguing.
Doesn't the eminent domain come into being because it's an interstate pipeline?
Yes, it
So
does.
in fact, it is interstate.
It is
Doesn't that
interstate, but eminent domain is not a free-for-all. Like, they can't just come in and claim eminent domain willy-nilly. There has to be, I mean, there's a process that it goes through before eminent domain.
But eminent domain is applicable because it's interstate.
Yes, but what I think John was getting at was that because this gas is very potentially going to be sold to overseas markets, that is not a public necessity, and because they decline eminent domain, it has to be a public necessity, so this pipeline may not actually qualify for eminent domain. And that would require, I'm sure, a legal case and determination of whether that would happen or not.
Yeah, I work on about 2 or 3 of these already with FERC, and it will get approved. Make no doubt about it. You can make as many comments as you want. It will get approved. And once it gets approved, it will get eminent domain. That's a given. So protect yourself. Do not sign an agreement. Wait till they get eminent domain, because then you're not agreeing to industrial activity on your property. So protect yourselves.
And that's true too. Well, I'm not going to say it's true that it's going to get approved. I mean, that's yet to be seen. It's still in the process of it. And I firmly believe in if we act as citizens, then we can make changes, especially when we're acting together. But yeah, as far as it goes, if you sign a right-of-way agreement, then you're signing an agreement for compensation for losses, and you might lose some of your rights as far as if there are if incidents are to happen that would affect you, your person, or your property. You've already agreed upon terms for settlement of that, and you won't necessarily get to take any additional action if whatever the incident is that occurs happens to cause more damage than what you're being compensated for.
Can you talk a little bit about the lines? There's supposed to be a 36 and a 42-inch line, and it's a substantial amount of pressure in those lines. Do you know that? How much pressure is in a 42-inch line?
I had it on my slideshow, which is
900,
down
1,200,
1,200,
900.
12,000, maybe?
900 to 12. Yes, it's like 900 to 1,300 feet.
Okay, hold on.
And the other question is the compressor station. How much is, who is bothered by a compressor on their property, or how far away is it? Could be the water, or the sound, and the gas that's released when they do things 7% is lost in the transmission line, and you think that's a lot. And if there's a lot more at the compressor station, and I don't know how much, but somebody does.
It varies depending on what compressor station, and so the way compressor stations are permitted with the DEP is they'll have to get air quality permits, depending on the size of the compressor station, how many engines they want to have, how many other different processing equipment they'll have to have there. It'll either be a minor source of air contaminants or a major source of air contaminants. And that when a company is applying to have a compressor station permitted, they have to write a plan that will show what air contaminants will be in it and how much they anticipate releasing. And that's based on the specifications the manufacturer will have for the equipment, which are rated for best operating conditions and proper maintenance and care. And so those numbers don't reflect any anticipated malfunctions or failures or lack of, anything like that.
Yes, I think it's important to point out that when the DEP issues a permit and there's air quality monitor, for a compressor station, it's not for the station. It is for each individual engine. Compressor stations may start with 1 or 2 compressor engines, then they end up with 10. Now, what the DEP is not required to do, and they do not do, is they do not aggregate the emissions from the entire facility. Because almost each engine is within what they consider an acceptable limit. And a perfect example of that is not far from here is the Bardo compressor station over in, Beaver, Lycoming County, Beaver Lake. That was tested, and it was 298 times above the acceptable limits. And nothing has been done about it. It's, oh well.
And I will say that for engines, sure, however it's submitted to the PADEP, but if a company is constructing a compressor station initially and they know that they're going to put 3 engines in, then that particular permit will have the emissions for all 3 engines.
Right, but the engines are rated individually, that's what I'm saying.
And again, they're for best operating conditions and don't take into account any malfunctions or other things that could happen. So that's a significant point to make. The woman
I'm sorry, yes.
So the decibel average, I think, is 55?
It would depend on the engine and who manufactures it, and how many engines there are for each particular site. I mean, there are a lot of different variables for all of
There are two compressor stations planned for this county.
Two.
two for this county.
One up in northern Columbia, near 118, and there are 3 possible sites around Winsboro, I believe.
That's what I read, that's what I read.
And again, depending on whether or not the compressor station is determined to be a minor or a major source of air emissions, there will be further regulatory processes. If it's a major source, then there will be an open comment period where folks can submit comments. Well, I personally don't know of any 13 did reassert, or the recent Supreme Court ruling on the Act 13, the natural gas law for Pennsylvania, did reassert community rights and local self-government. So theoretically, yes, as a township, as a local government, you will have control over zoning and where these activities can be placed. While we're on that note, there is a group called the Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund that works across the country with local communities to set up what are called community bills of rights, which will assert the intrinsic rights of nature that effectively will prevent any Marcellus activities from coming into your community. And I know the folks on that back wall are really eager to talk to folks about working with the Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund to establish community bills of rights, if, as residents, that is a route you want to take.
Well, I understand they do that free of charge.
We fought the landfill becoming a municipal landfill in this county. We got 400 people to the first meeting, and we got 2,000 people to sign our petitions and provide us funding. And we won. And that is the only way that we won, because everybody was on one side of that issue. We didn't want it here. But this meeting and the meeting that I attended last week, they're good. But does anybody in here know a township supervisor, a representative, a senator, a county commissioner, who stood up and said, look, I'm protecting these people in this town. I'm protecting the people in this community.
Cecil Township in Washington, actually it's either in Washington or Greene County, their township supervisors, they were actually involved in the Act 13 case that went before the Supreme Court, and they stood up for their residents. They're unfortunately can be hard to find, but with enough public pressure, with enough support of the people in the community banding together, then your officials are supposed to act with the public interest.
They should be having meetings and calling people together.
From what I understand from Williams' proposed pipeline route, they're going to stay a little bit to the west of, populated centers like Bloomsburg. And they do have a proposed compressor station out near Buckhorn, where we have our mall and, quite a large exit and truck stop area, a lot of businesses. And this 42-inch line is going to run to the, upwind of Bloomsburg and some of these more populated areas, because they can run it as a class 1 through rural area where there is no regulation on that pipeline. If they can stay in areas with the least number of houses. The only trouble with that plan, though, is what I did was looked up all the different schools, including this one, that are within the 2-mile to 4-mile evacuation zone in case the pipeline ruptures and there's an explosion. Also threatened is 2 or 3 old folks' homes, Orangeville and out here near Millville. There's Bloomsburg University, Geisinger Bloomsburg Hospital, the mall that I mentioned. All the way down this line, there are places that are in the evacuation zone, especially for a 42-inch, 1,000 PSI line. So they're going to get away with no regulations, but the line itself threatens people, in a lot bigger way than they're, pretending to.
Which is why it is so important to submit comments. If FERC is not hearing from you as residents that you have concerns about this, then they're going to assume that you don't have concerns about this and are okay with the activities that are going to occur. Now, a lot of people are still going to be unaware of it, which is also why you should talk to your neighbors, to your friends, to your family, to people in the community you're active with, and
the proposed pipeline route actually on the FERC website?
It is. Yes.
And that's, I think, if people kind of use that, at least they could say, wow, that's close to this, that's close to that. And just having this, it's going to happen, and but exactly where did they first propose it, kind of give people a feeling like, okay, I'm seeing it going right by the wall, up north, and going wherever, you know, it's going to cut right next to Knoble or something like that.
Yeah.
So, okay, hey, we now have a community interest, there goes, you know, let's go to the compressor station right next to Knoble, so we can get rid of that part.
Those maps are available on their website, and if I had more financial resources, I would have printed out big, huge copies of them to hang on the wall behind me.
Oh, no, that's fine, I just, that's a
Can
big reason I came to find out.
How do you get on the website? I can't find it.
In the packet of materials,
Okay.
you received the hamburger style that is not the official organization brochure that says pipeline and regulatory processes. All of that information on how to look up documents, how to submit comments, and how to act as an intervener are included in those pages.
Do you know how many interstate pipelines FERC has actually turned down for the last 10 years?
Probably none. But no, I do not know.
It is,
This is why I said you're not going to win by submitting comments to FERC. Submit as many comments as you want, make a lot of trouble for them, but just say no, and say no together. Because you will not convince FERC of anything. FERC will tweak it, and FERC will give you a pre-vetted response. It happens every time. Every time.
And that may be true. I mean, you may submit all the comments you want, and it may not have much of an impact on FERC whatsoever. And then that is another conversation you have to have with your community on where do you want to take this next? Like, what is your individual and collective threshold of how far are you willing to go to keep this activities from coming to your community? How far are you not willing to go? Yes, ma'am.
I mean, I guess potentially there could be enough viable comments to FERC that they would have to at least look at those, analyze them, maybe slow it down a little, and bar stretch that investors would say, you know what, this pipeline's taking too long, let's, you know, do something different, but I think some shred of hope that you
Those
can
are all-
install it.
It's all possibilities, but if you're not being active in the process in whatever way you choose to be active in the process, then you're not going to have any say over how the process happens.
yeah, I want to speak a little bit of experience I had on one pipeline, and I wasn't in on that. We had, talk about getting people together, we had amassed 22,092 signatures opposing it. We had a bipartisan group, 35 state representatives, who sided with us. The EPA sided with us, claiming it was not necessary. We had 3 county commissioners and 5 state senators vote to approve it. It was approved. The day after it was approved, and they had said eminent domain would be an absolute last resort. The day after it was approved, they filed eminent domain against 85 of the 114 properties.
So what do you suggest, ma'am?
Well, what I suggest is, and you have to keep in mind, what is FERC? The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, but they're not a federal agency. They are a private agency. They are funded in large part by the oil and gas industry. They are simply licensed by the federal government to oversee permits. Their job is to approve remove the berms. That's their job. It's like the Federal Reserve. They're not federal, and there's no reserve. The best way to deal with this is you need, to pressure your state representatives, county commissioners, township supervisors, and threaten them with their jobs.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm interested, I live in Denton, and I'm interested in working in the field in the future, and I'm wondering, so we talked about like writing letters to FERC and whether or not it's useful, but what kind of events would people like to see in this county that you feel would be useful continuing in the future, either to get more information or to keep it off the land, or like, what are ideas that are kind of sticking around right now?
Not everyone at once.
I maybe can't be answered right now, but I feel like there's a lot that we can do. Is there a Facebook page? So there's been once-a-month meetings of people who are concerned about this pipeline, who have been getting together to do a lot of research, to put events like this together. We're also working with people in Lebanon and Lancaster counties who are doing the same sort of outreach. So there's ways to get involved, come to meetings and get involved in the different things that are going on. But yeah, what do you do?
One resource, and these will be from members of the Shale Justice Coalition. We are actively working on a series of what will be letters to the editor. You will be able to find, for example, in the Press Enterprise, but also other of the regional newspapers. And each of these letters will pinpoint one aspect of the issues that revolve around the pipeline construction. So the first letter that you might have seen in the Press Enterprise, written by a lovely gentleman named Dave Weidecker, who is the director for Shale Justice, had to do with the fact that this is all going to be for LNG export, primarily to China and India and Japan. And the next letter that you will see will have to do specifically with the ways in which eminent domain, forest pooling, and forest integration are relevant to this pipeline. So that's just one resource. There are many, but that's one resource that you can be looking for.
And is that true? That we will get, nobody in this county will get anything from this pipeline because of the transmission line, right? We'll get no benefit from this. It will not relieve our reliance on Middle East oil, or won't do any of that stuff.
No.
Well, gas won't reduce our reliance on oil
Well-
anyway, but as far as, they may have some places along the pipeline where they have stations set up to distribute gas locally. I'm not familiar
What they
with
said
this.
about this one was, some company, a big national known company, could build such a station, but it would be price prohibitive. They wouldn't, for the gas for itself in it, so there wouldn't be. So, see, that's, we need
And
to
most
check those
likely
things.
to know, it's not gonna have any benefit to you. It's going to go to either northeastern markets or southeastern markets. So the entire Transco pipeline here, this is just one section of it. It goes from South Texas to New York City. So the gas can go to any of those markets along this proposed section goes through.
Well, the other thing, that people, you should look at it. PHMSA, that's the Pipeline Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, has a map that is on www.centerforbiologicaldiversity.org. And the interesting thing about that is the people who are against the pipeline are using that, and the people who are for the pipeline are using that. And it's a time-lapse map, like you showed, of the United States. And it's from 1986 to 2013. And your numbers were smaller, but it's 8,000 pipeline incidents, 5,000 deaths, 2,300 injuries, and nearly $7 billion in damage over that 27-year period. And what it does, it shows those incidents starting in 1986 to 2013, and it'll blow your mind.
And yeah, that website, and then the Frac Tracker Alliance also, has an aggregated map of pipeline incidents across the country, and that's where I got the 1.6 a day.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier that, as a community, we need to get together and find out what direction we want to go in. And unfortunately, like many other communities, this county and the town of Benton, I've seen, is divided between those who have, leased their property and would like to see the gas development increase where they can get some royalty money coming in, which is their right, and the people who are against it for whether it's environmental reasons or health and safety reasons or whatever. So it's really hard to get the whole community behind any kind of an effort and reach some kind of an agreement. But the thing is that what people can do right now, while this is in pre-filing, is refuse to allow a survey. Don't let the survey crew on your land. If you've gotten a letter from Williams and they want to come on your land and you're against having the pipeline completed, then just refuse to give them permission to survey your land. That's the only way to slow this process down. If you want them on your land, that's your right as well. But if you are against this pipeline, you need to not sign any kind of legal binding contract with Williams right now. That's a
That's
stop.
right, and if you, for anything that you may consider signing, it's definitely in your best interest to have legal representation, look over, anything that you're considering signing.
Thank you.
When Katie's here, she does a lot more with, how to do monitoring of it. Really, now it's how are you as a community gonna get together, and even if it's not the whole community, folks who are interested, who needs to be there will be there. I mean, if you wanna do it, you will, and hopefully you'll all connect.
If someone wanted to get in touch with like the monthly meetings, how would they go about that?
They talk to you. And one of the sheets of paper you have, the primer on the back side of it has contact information for the Shellfield Organizing Committee. And they do the local events and strategy meetings, so you can contact them and they'll be able to help you out.
Deirdre, who spoke earlier back here, she has a sign-up list, from table, she'll bring it up here. But it's for anybody who's interested in joining that. There's been monthly strategy meetings going on, people who are interested in, doing something about the pipeline in Berlin. You can sign up, to get more information about the upcoming strategy meetings.
And if you have any additional questions at a later time, I'm generally always available to answer questions. I don't have all the answers, it's impossible to have all of the answers, but I'm generally pretty good at finding the answers and the resources, so, if you need it, I'm here to do that.
There are a lot of options that people have talked about here, and this gentleman back here, a couple of people said it's going to go through in their experience. And so I guess every landowner, I don't have an answer, but every landowner has to decide, are they going to band together, just fight the whole thing and perhaps lose, or negotiate the best terms of surrender, really. And the only thing I'll say is, my wife and I this Saturday, just by happenstance, were at a gas pipeline restoration project in Pike County. It was a Tennessee line, came through, connected to Columbia Gas. And the people that own the property, 1,400 acres, are very much environmentalists. In fact, it was the grandson of Gifford Pinchot who set up the U.S. Public Forest Service and his daughter. And what they chose to do was to accept the, I'm not arguing that this is the way to go, but they negotiated the best terms that they could get with the gas company in terms of the restoration of their property. in terms of plantings, in terms of how the pipeline went through. And they were pretty satisfied with what they got. I'm not saying it's going to be the same here, I'm not even arguing for that. I'm just saying for one Saturday this weekend, we saw a restoration project that these people who are committed environmentalists negotiated with the gas company, and they were satisfied. They're doing plantings along the pipeline, they're seeding it the way they want it to, so it become a food plot for deer, other animals, so you can hunt. So I'm saying that everyone has to decide how they want to approach this. Sometimes you may have to negotiate. If it's going to go through, that would be the option.
By the way, I work on that Tennessee pipeline, and I know we talked about it. The one key element I leave people with is it's not restoration. You'll hear the government call it restoration, you'll hear the companies call it restoration, you'll hear the environmental community call it restoration. It is not restoration, it's reclamation. What that Tennessee pipeline went through hundreds and hundreds of acres, 100-year-old forest, and they did not restore any of that.
Well, I want to add one thing, and this is on really the negative side, and this is the size of the right-of-way. You see the number, oh, it's a 55-foot right-of-way. You talked about this in your presentation. But then, that's the permanent right-of-way. But then there's the temporary workspace, which could be up to 75 feet more. The line that we saw went right through his forest, so 1,400 acres. It cut a 125-foot swath right through the forest.
It's what you personally, what you feel, what you can live with. It's your choice as a landowner, but it's going to have an impact on more than just yourself.
And more than just now.
And
This is
more than
forever.
just
This
now.
isn't going away when that gas runs out. We're gonna be stuck with all the crap.
That's right. And again, it's not just the, well, here, right now, it's the pipeline. The pipeline is not separate from the rest of the processes that are involved in getting the gas. You can't have a pipeline without having a well drilled.
I wonder if it's just worth adding to that, just for perspective. There are currently in Pennsylvania approximately 7,800 pads with more wells per pad. It's not the case that there's, say, simply just one well per pad. There can be, for example, as many as 7. But the estimate, and this is the gas industry's own estimate for Pennsylvania, is that we may see as many by about 2017 or so, as many as 200,000 drills, 200,000 wells, with all of the related infrastructure, all of the necessary compressor stations, and all of the pipeline. And when you consider that the pipeline is intended primarily for export, what's also important about that is that the price of natural gas, low as it is now, will escalate